I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eric, and welcome back to another episode of Deciphering My Experience. We are joined today by two wonderful gentlemen. In studio from 0 Point Truth Radio is Jimmy. Welcome, Jimmy, to the studio.
Greetings, all.
And also on the line, zooming in, we have Mr. Alfred Labremont Webre. Alfred is from Exopolitics, and he's up in Canada, and a lot of you folks probably know his backstory, but I do have, we can just pull up right here. I have some info on Alfred. It says here that Alfred is a futurist. Principal social contributions have been the founding the science of exopolitics, the 2014 discovery of the omniverse, and the development of the positive future equation and the ascension hypothesis that describes soul development in our universe and omniverse. It says here that Alfred is editor on newsinsideout.com, exopolitics.com, and Exopolitics TV. He was the co-founder and chairman of the advisory board of Mars and the Mars Anomaly Research Society, and was among the founding members of the Exopolitics Institute. That is some background you got there. Welcome very much to the show, Alfred.
Well, thank you very much. And the more that those become mainstream activities, it means that our planet is transforming and changing. And it means that we're finally joining universe society and ceasing to be an outlier planet that's kind of in dreamland.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could all join the big picture. But unfortunately, the nature of the beast, I think, for eons has been misinformation, disinformation, and a lot of additional Hegelian dialectic applied.
With the emphasis on beast, right?
Yes, yes. But I was very interested in talking to you because you have such a rich background in, I would say, for lack of better terms, all things abnormal outside of the mainstream.
Inside out.
Inside out, basically.
Paranormal, not abnormal. I would say paranormal.
Paranormal. Okay, paranormal. That works. And I have what I would say is a lot of paranormal experiences in my background. And I guess I would just like to pick your ear, throw some things out there, and see if there's anything that you might have learned in your experiences that may help me with mine.
Sure.
Okay. When I was a child, I was involved in what I now know to be a CIA or DIA run program known as Stargate.
Stargate. Wow.
And that was basically the last title that I can follow it to in the mid-90s. It seems the program went very dark in 1994. Prior to that, it was operating under the names of Operation or Project Grill Flame.
Project what? Sorry.
Grill Flame, like a barbecue
Grill
grill.
Flame.
And then another common name for it was Center Lane, Project Center Lane.
Center Lane. I've heard Project Grill Flame under different auspices, but Stargate, okay.
Yes, so it's effectively all the exact same stuff, but every time they would change clearance levels or department heads that were functioning the program, they would get new paperwork, new titles, and new funding. And this information is currently available straight out of the CIA's home web page, and I do a lot of data mining from their own archives. And so a lot of the stuff that I have is info right from them. And it's very clear that many people were processed through these programs. And I even found the Stargate consent form, which states very clearly that the participants can be knowing or unknowing participants. And I find it interesting that everything that I read in these programs, there's nothing stipulated in the verbiage that prevents them from utilizing children. So I'm trying to find more folks that have an understanding that these programs were actually that dark and going in the direction nefariously of engaging children in them. And that's
we have a harvesting problem with that too, Eric. The planet's a food source.
Totally understood. Those are all the things that I'm learning from deciphering my experience, is that the more I look into it, the problems are just exponential. I remember reading a book by Itzhak Bentov called Stalking the Wild Pendulum, which is actually referenced in the CIA information. It was part of their format for understanding consciousness. But Bentov, in his own studies, in the foreword of his book, he jokingly said that in his quest for knowledge, the only thing he's ever done is increase his ignorance, because anytime he's ever answered one question, it only caused more questions. So effectively, he was always increasing his ignorance.
Yeah, that's true.
But now that program as well, Alfred, my suspicion is because, as I had mentioned to you just before we had gotten on the air, that I had also spent a little time in the United States submarine service. And it was for a weapons position. And I've had folks suggest to me, and I'm in alignment with it at this point, that certain positions in life, since we seem to be a big farm planet where they're trying to create labor forces, it was presented to me that certain factions, like the United States Navy, when they have a position they want to fill, they're not necessarily going to wait for someone to be 18 years old and volunteer and then start training them. That the training can actually start way beforehand. And this idea of selecting the service that you do versus a service selecting you is also a misrepresentation in our society. What do you think about that?
Well, I can give a lengthy answer.
Go for it.
However, before I do that, I'd like to ask you, because so far I only have the names of Stargate Grill Flame, which I've heard before, and Central Lane. I think I've heard Stargate. Could you tell me what the content of these, or the activities of these three were? Because I haven't.
Yes.
Really, yeah.
You got it. So for all practical purposes, it was the start of the mind manipulation programs. They were working with a gentleman by the name of Ingo Swann to get a group of remote viewers together. Hal Puthoff was another gentleman, and they were learning that it was possible for a human being to know something outside of utilizing their standard five senses to gain how they knew it. So now the CIA wasn't really trying to explain how this functioned. All they were doing was looking to figure out how to how to use it. They didn't care why it worked. They just wanted to work it. You know, it'd be like if someone found a car and cars didn't exist yet, and they just wanted to learn how to drive it instead of breaking it down and figuring it out. They just drove the darn thing. So the CIA was figuring out that remote viewing was a real extrasensory activity that they could get involved with. And that was what the program was about, was effectively learning how to use this in a tactical fashion or a weaponized fashion, and then finding out who in society had a propensity to utilize the skill set and then engage them to increase the skill set. And the remote viewers stated that anyone can technically remote view, similarly to anyone can play a guitar. It's just a matter of if you want to try to and how hard you want to practice. Some people are better at it than others, but nothing's stopping anyone from remote viewing.
Okay. And what years were you in remote viewing?
I would put it in the proximity of, I would say 82-ish to the early 90s would be my best guess.
Okay, I can see that we have a somewhat parallel career history.
Fair enough.
Okay, so let me download where our career tracks are parallel. Let's see where I'll start.
I'll insert, he was in New York too, actually, where you were.
Yes, I was on Long Island.
Eric,
Okay,
Alfred was in.
I was in Manhattan. Okay, let me see to what depth I'll go. Okay, so I'll start in 1991 and 1972. Let's say that it's right now it's 14:28. It's 2:28, and we'll go for about maybe 60 more minutes.
You got it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in 1969, Earth time, and February 1972, Earth time. In February 1972, Earth time, I was beginning of February, February 2nd or 3rd, I was taken up into a spaceship of light-oriented extraterrestrials. And that was corresponding with a similar experience that Jimmy Carter had before he became president in January of 1969, where he was taken up, and these were coordinated extraterrestrials, and it was similar experience that U.S. chrononaut time traveler had, Andrew D. Basiago, in 1975 aboard the same craft. And we were coordinated such that in 1975, the extraterrestrials showed Andrew D. Basiago pictures of me aboard the craft in 1972, excuse me, in 1973, so that he would be able to testify that I was aboard that. And the purpose of this was, number one, to help coordinate the presidential victory of Jimmy Carter and his administration, to help coordinate my directorship of the Jimmy Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study, and to help coordinate Andrew D. Basiago's run for the presidency in 2016 as a time traveler, okay? And what happened, and that's at 5D, and in 5D, a great deal took place during my missing time experience. And a lot of that from the 3D perspective is described here. You can go to universebooks.com, and what I've done is there, I've made available the ebook versions of all the books on a donation basis, so people can either donate or they can download it for free. But there's a 750-page book called My Journey Landing Heaven on Earth that describes that missing time experience. It starts there.
Mhm.
And this is sort of written as a screenplay that goes from 1973, that missing time, up through 2015. So it's all set out there,
Excellent.
going back and forth between 5D on the spaceships, 5D, and back down to 3D. So that's all kind of mapped out right there. And so a lot of what I'm saying has already been documented, and the documentation of this three-way Carter, Basiago, Webre extraterrestrial adduction. By adduction, it's not an abduction. Adduction is taken to the stars, where the consciousness of the humans taken are really expanded. That is expanded. That is, we're made like the extraterrestrials for positive purposes on Earth. And so during the adduction experience, I was given a view such that what I'm doing now with the living platform for a new Earth, for a new Earth community, and with a tribunal, etc., I actually saw an experience back in February of 1973, Earth time, although I was outside of time then. It's like seeing a movie or being inside, some sort of a reality where you're experiencing the future. Does that make sense to you? I mean, what I'm saying?
Absolutely does.
Yeah. So that's what occurred. And so moving back down to Earth in 1976, in November, December 76, right after Jimmy Carter won the presidency in the November 76, an intermediary of his called me and asked me to lunch at the Carlisle Hotel in New York, where I lived, and as an intermediary from President Jimmy Carter, and said that President Carter wanted to stay in close touch with me because at that time I was a consultant with the House Select Committee on Assassinations, with specifically with Representative Henry B. Gonzalez, who was the chairman. He was the chairman of the House Banking Committee. He was also the chairman of the House Committee on Assassinations, investigating the assassination of John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X. And it's little known, but Jimmy Carter's the half brother of John F. Kennedy. They have the same father. Jimmy Carter's mother was John Kennedy's father's secretary.
Mm-hmm.
And when
did you know that even their assassins were similar? Did you know that one, Alfred? That's another connection they have in common. JFK was assassinated by who?
Well,
as the story goes, as the mainstream media presented it, who was his killer?
No. I mean, but I've interviewed in depth Lee Harvey Oswald's girlfriend. Lee Harvey Oswald was a double agent who had penetrated the plot. And
I get that, but again, we still agree that the presentation was it was Lee Harvey Oswald.
Well, as
Carter. Right, correct. But now Carter had an assassination attempt as well. And there were two assassins. Do you know what their names were? Raymond Lee Harvey and Oswaldo Ortiz.
There you go.
Right? That's people playing games.
Yeah. So it's typical Luciferian Satanist.
Yes.
Double wango.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, so what they asked me to, and this is where we're going to link up with pay attention, because
I'm
this is
listening.
where we're going to link up with, right now, we're going to link up with Operation Stargate, okay? Right after this Carlisle hotel. So, and then they invited me down to a dinner down in Washington, D.C., and I at a house on Capitol Hill. And I went there, and there were members of Carter's inner circle there. You know, they call them JC and the 12 Apostles, right? And so, and of course, I had all pre-lived this because we had pre-rehearsed this aboard the spacecraft, right?
Mhm.
And now we were living it in 3D, although I didn't have full consciousness of what I had pre-rehearsed it up there. So, you know, get to this thing, and it says, "Oh, y'all gonna work for peanut?" You know, that's what they're talking about. That's what it's like. So we're sitting there, and this is in the interim, you know, in the transition, they call it, such as right now we're in the transition between Biden and who knows, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Tomorrow's January 6th.
Tomorrow's
We'll
tomorrow.
see,
We're not
right?
going to know apparently till tomorrow.
We'll see. I mean, there's all these predictions.
Yep.
We'll see.
Mhm.
Today, Nicola Sturgeon said apparently Trump's plane is supposed to land in Scotland on January 19th. And Nicola Sturgeon said that she's prohibiting Trump from playing golf at his golf course because he'll break the pandemic quarantine, the lockdown. So he's not going to allow her.
Mhm.
He's not going to allow Trump to land in Scotland on January 19th. Okay, so that's the current state of play. Okay, so I mean, this is wheels within wheels and games within games.
Yes.
Because we published an article, News Inside Out, prior to the 2016 election, in which we showed that, as we had showed with Bush Sr., Bush Jr., Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, DARPA CIA, secret time travel program called Project Pegasus, had pre-identified all US presidents in 1971, had brought them in 1971, had debriefed them and saying, you're going to be a future US president, and then had groomed them to be president. And that's why Donald Trump got Mikasa that had been given to the nation, to the Interior Department, by Marjorie Merriweather Post, the heiress to the Post fortune worth $150 million, and why he got it through the back door by the CIA for $6 million. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because they set up Daddy Warbucks. These are all setups. You know, this is complete. We're dealing with what I call the chronarchy, the time travel government.
Yes.
That is using quantum access time travel technology to go down in the future and then to manufacture leaders.
Yes.
And whether they govern from the left or the right, it's all stagecraft.
To manufacture people for future positions.
Yeah. Now, so then, as I was sitting there in December of 1976, I suddenly got the concept. I said, oh, well, Jimmy Carter, and I don't know whether this is something that we discuss on the spacecraft or not, but it came to me in 3D. I said, well, let's have the first civilian-led extraterrestrial communication study, because Gerald Ford had it, and he brought in the head of Edsel to say, oh, UFOs are all swamp gas, right? So it's all controlled. because he had had a UFO flap in Michigan. Now, so that's what I left the dinner in the transition period of 1976. And for family reasons then, I had to go back to the Bay Area in Christmas of 1976. And who did I call? And first I went to New York, and I called my friend, who said, well, look, why don't you come down to the Bowery and meet my good friend on the Bowery, Ingo Swann.
Nice.
Okay, so this is where we have the connection.
Nice.
The connection with Operation Stargate. So I go down with my good friend, who's a good buddy with Ingo Swann, and we go down to his apartment on the Bowery. And Ingo Swann and my friend and I have a great time in his apartment on the Bowery. And I say to Ingo, look, Ingo, I just had a great meeting on Capitol Hill with the inner staff of Jimmy Carter, who's going to be president. And he has made a campaign promise to open up the UFO secrets. So the concept is that why don't we have the first genuine UFO extraterrestrial communication project, not one that is a setup by the military industrial complex that are all reptilians, right?
Yep.
They're controlled by the reptilians. We're the humans, right? We're not the reptilians. He says, great. You're going out to the West Coast. I said, yeah, I'm going out to the Bay Area. I want you to look up, and here are their phone numbers, look up Hal Puthoff and Russ Targ at SRI. I said, okay.
Yep.
So then I get out to the Bay Area and I call up Hal Puthoff.
These are the guys that were running Stargate, Alfred. This is.
I know. That's why I'm telling you.
This is great.
I'm telling you how history happens.
Yep.
And this is how our projects link up. So in the Christmas break of 1976, then I call up Hal Puthoff and Russ Targ to say, come on over. And I go over to SRI and I say, look, I just met in the transition with Jimmy Carter's Inner Circle, and we can set up a civilian-led extraterrestrial communication project. And I got all the approvals. So he says, oh, I know just the way to do it. Let me pick up the phone and call Peter Schwartz at the Center for the Study of Social Policy, which is the Futurist unit here, because it should be done through the Futurist unit. I said, sure, I'll do it. There's a wrinkle there, which I'm about to tell you. So then we call up the Futurist unit, and I go over to the Futurist unit, and I meet with them, and I say, look, here's this project, because the lifeblood of Stanford Research Institute is what they call contract research. And that is, they do research on contract for the US government and for other organizations. So this would be to do an extraterrestrial communication study for the Carter White House on contract, right? And so on the spot, they made me an offer to be a futurist at the Center for the Study of Social Policy. So I said, okay, I accept. So I joined the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and it worked out because my family had moved out west anyway. And I start there in January in the early spring, January, February of 1977. And I start traveling from Palo Alto to the White House, okay? And we get all of the approvals, and I start putting together the project for the first civilian-led extraterrestrial communication study in history of the United States. And I bring on Jacques Vallée, I bring on Peter Sturrock, who's the head of physics at Stanford. Everybody, all of this, you can go to exopolitics.com. You can see the full history there. You can go download my book, Exopolitics, that founded the study of exopolitics. The history of that is all in here in this book. It's all, you know, it's all transparent. And the day that I got the complete White House approval, right? This is for the first extraterrestrial communication study approved by the Carter White House, as it was done, you know, as above, so below. We first agreed to do it up on the ships, and then we got to do it down below at the White House level, okay? And everything was honky-dory, except for one thing. And this is where there's always a curveball, right? So I'm about to tell you that the curveball, which happened in October of 1977. So in October of 1977, Peter Schwartz, a fellow futurist at Stanford Research Institute, who since went on to be a futurist for Royal Dutch Shell Oil Company, boom, and for the Global Business Network, boom, approaches me and says, why don't you go and meet with an Assistant Secretary of Defense at the inner ring of the Pentagon on your next visit to Washington, okay? And I said, because he can tell you a lot about satellite-based platforms, okay? I said, okay, I'll do that. And so I booked a trip, and there were two purposes to that trip. And I used to stay at the Hay Adams Hotel across from the White House, okay? And I used to go in there and I'd be having lunch at the Hay Adams. I'd look up this way at the window, and there'd be like an agent, you know, looking at me, having lunch like that, you know? That's how it was. I was shadowed, right? Boom. So from the Hay Adams, I would go over to the White House, and I got the final approvals for the Carter White House Extraterrestrial Communication Project, and this was in October of 1977. And then I had, because of Peter Schwartz, that appointment that afternoon. So I got in a cab, and there was always an escort. I was supposed to meet the liaison, the SRI liaison to the Pentagon at the Pentagon. So I got to the Pentagon, and they took me into the inner ring of the Pentagon, right? There's 5 rings. And at that time, what there was at the inner ring of the Pentagon was a picnic table. It was a picnic table with a little cupboard on there at the inner ring. And they took me into the office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense to be briefed on these satellite-based platforms, okay? And as I got in there, I was sitting in the anteroom. You know, there's a secretary in the anteroom, and then there's the office, and everything is kind of oak paneled. And the secretary suddenly, you know, is reading a newspaper and brings up the newspaper like this. And on the newspaper that she's reading are these giant letters that say SEX on it. So it's like, shh, and it was a female secretary. And then I start getting hit. It was the first time in my life that I was hit with remote directed energy weapons. So I walked into a trap, which was they started beaming me with directed energy weapons in order to try and destabilize me, okay? Because
What year
the
did you say that was?
The Pentagon is run by reptilians.
Oh, I
So
believe
the
that.
White House was run by light-oriented extraterrestrials, namely Jimmy Carter, with whom I had connected in 1973, and the Pentagon was run by reptilian-oriented humans.
Alfred, fill me in. What was the year that you were saying was the first time you got hit by the directed energy weapon?
This was in October of 1977.
Gotcha. That was 77. Thank you.
Yeah, and that was Peter Schwartz that set me up.
Okay.
So let's say the off-planet part.
So
was-
from there,
Oops.
it was like, So from there, I had an appointment to fly down to New Orleans. One of my brothers was studying architecture in New Orleans. I was going down to visit him. But the real reason I was going down there was to meet, I had an invitation to meet with the district attorney of New Orleans, who was pursuing some advanced research on the John F. Kennedy assassination. And I was supposed to meet him that Sunday at the New Orleans Athletic Club. Well, there was a traveling exhibit of the King Tut exhibit that Saturday. And when I got there, I was hit again with directed energy weapons, that it was like, somebody had sprayed me with LSD, at the exhibit. I was like, so I had to cancel that. And by the time I got back to SRI, I was like, so I was severely targeted after the White House approval of the Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study.
Mhm.
And all of this is documented in these books.
Excellent.
And it's documented in my disclosure project affidavit. And it's documented online at exopolitics.com. I was targeted out of the Assistant Secretary of Defense office in a meeting set up by Peter Schwartz, okay, the fellow futurist.
Mhm.
So inside the government and inside this apparatus, you have networks of reptilian-led and light ET-led humans, each of whom are in battling networks and organizations. Okay, so that is, and long story short, I ended up leaving that post because I was like super targeted, right? And I ended up leaving. I went down, I became a freelance journalist. I went down to Mexico City, where I covered the Jimmy Carter visit to Mexico. Jodie Foster, who was the press secretary to Carter, Jodie, I forget his last name, gave me, my press credentials, and I covered that. And then I covered the Pope John Paul II's first visit to Mexico, and I covered the President of France and all of that. And I sort of graduated to a different sort of thing because I was so severely targeted. Now, the second time around and this ties into the tribunal that I'm doing now. So the second time around that I came into Peter Schwartz was that in 2010, after a very secretive May 5th, 2009 secretive meeting in the president's room at Rockefeller University, organized by Bill Gates and David Rockefeller Jr., in which they decide to, for eugenicist reasons, to bring down the population of the earth from 7 billion to 1 billion, and to do it via vaccinations and organize a phony pandemic. In May of 2010, the Global Business Net, the Rockefeller Foundation issues a joint report with the Rockefeller Foundation and the Global Business Network, authored by Peter Schwartz, which is, we call it the Lockstep 2010 to 2020 Lockstep Report. And it's the blueprint of the 2020 pandemic. It sets up the 2020 pandemic. It sets up the 2012 Olympics, where the opening ceremony of the Olympics it's a foreshadowing, where you have the NHS come out, and with all the hospital beds, you have an effigy of Boris Johnson and his blonde hair in a hospital bed. Then you set up in the false flag drills, or event 201 on October 18th, 2019. On the same day in Wuhan, China, you have the World Military Games, that opening ceremony is October 18th, 2019, where the opening ceremony of the World Military Games is a giant COVID-19 virus, boom. And the US military delegation trains on the grounds of Fort Detrick, the CIA bioweapons lab. They are embedded from there. They carry the COVID-19 virus to Wuhan. 49 members of the Chinese hotel staff where the US military games stayed come down with COVID. And as did 6 members of the military staff. They're all treated with chloroquine, and that's where they unleash the 5G, and the whole thing starts at the World Military Games. And it's all coming out of the 2010 report that was drafted by none other than Peter Schwartz, the guy who set me up with the first targeting after I had got, on the same day that I got the final approval from the Jimmy Carter White House. So it was a counterattack by the reptilians on the ground against the agreement that we had had. So it stifled the first civilian-led Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study that we had completely. If you go online, you have a complete outline of the study there. So that is an example of exopolitics, and that was my introduction to exopolitics, of how things can take place at the extraterrestrial level in what I call the dimensional ecology of the omniverse, where humans and extraterrestrials interact in a positive way. The humans then come down and attempt to implement it on Earth. And then you have the negative humans, the humans that are working with the Luciferian and reptilian forces, come in and try to block, okay? Now, my subjective feeling is that with the December 21st, 2020 Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, this is subjective, I can't prove it. We have gone through a portal and we have exited what I call duality consciousness, which is I win, you lose. Because the matrix or the deep state or those guys seem to be into I win, you lose. That's their consciousness. Whereas the light-oriented people are into we are one. You know, we're really trying to create a positive future here. And ever since that night, at the subjective level, it just seems that things are easier in terms of the development and the unfolding of, you know, sort of unity consciousness existence and projects and orientation. And you know, there's a thing of 5D and 3D, and that 5D, maybe ascension, is not this magical thing, but it's just those humans that really have human souls just becoming aware of, you know, and a lot of the resistance falling away. And then those negative souls, well, they can't really function in this new high vibration unity consciousness. And they kind of fall into their, you know, they're stuck in that duality consciousness. Well, we're just going to duke it out, you know? And so the whole purpose of projects like a living platform for a New Earth community is to set out a platform. And now I'll just go, because we have a little more time, and go through the areas of the living platform for a New Earth community. Truth and disclosure, a full public disclosure of the presence of intelligent civilization in Earth's environment. New energy, teleportation, and time travel, a full public disclosure of secret new energy, 0-point free anti-gravity new energy sources, implementation of teleportation as a global, national, regional, and local transportation system. Andy Bashago, his, you know, chrononaut, his job back in 1971 as a US chrononaut was to time travel from 1971 up to a DARPA forward time base in 2045 to take time scrolls from 2045 and bring them back to 1971 so that the past could get successfully to the future. And he said that the future was beautiful in 2045. You know, things that were, you had things, people were very tall, they were very happy. Teleportation was built into the walls of each, of all of the structures. See, one of the requisites of advanced planetary status is planetary teleportation. And right now, we have fossil fuels and the whole roadway and highway, which is a terrible land use system, and it breaks up urban systems. Read Jane Jacobs' books on the death of cities. Is highways in cities, and that was all the reptilian robber barons who made it such that to get you know, a loaf of bread, you have to strap 2 tons of steel around your waist and go to the corner store rather than teleport there. Other agenda items: recognition of animals as sentient beings with rights. Because of our secure virtual technology, we can now implement a Swiss canton democracy worldwide. In other words, secure online democracy at the local, regional, national, and global level. Going on with this, reinvention of money as a human right and public utility like air, water, or electricity, available for creative investment at public money utilities. I mean, just reinvent money instead of having it at this crooked, you know, the Bank for International Exchange, the central bank of all central banks. You have the Federal Reserve that was created by the Rothschild interests, where they sank these, you know, sank the Titanic to kill all of the bankers and you know, the creature of Jekyll Island. So we're all walking around with this false paper around one bloodline, which is itself Anunnaki reptilians. And we're treating that as property, and they create instant debt around a a platform for humans of war, disease, crime, and poverty. That's the only platform that the reptilians will have for humans. So we just reinvent money as a human right and public utility. More social guarantees in the form of annual income, healthcare, and elementary, secondary, and post-secondary education for every person on the planet for life. World debt forgiveness, disenfranchisement of the state power of monarchies and religions worldwide. You know, why should these families that are bloodline families from the Anunnaki, from the reptilians, and religions that walk around with hats looking like Anunnakis around false stories, why should they have state power? Criminalization of the war industry. War is an industry by which these, again, these vestigial powers, you know, perpetuate their control over humans, dividing us. Look at the First World War. I mean, they just churned up Europe over a family fight. They staged a family fight among cousins at the monarchical level and, you know, destroyed Europe. The criminal prosecution and conviction of war crimes and the racketeering organization. That's what we've done using the International Criminal Court statute with the pandemic, with our natural and common law tribunal for public health and justice. And finally, how does this manifest? And this really manifests through a new level of collective manifestation resulting from the synergistic dynamics of the positive timeline and a humanity awakening to unity consciousness. So that we are in 5D, and it's not this great, it's just happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the proposition.
And I think a lot of people are feeling that more and more. I can echo what you said about the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. Anyone who's half aware should have felt it. And you're right, we're on a positive wave. I like it.
Yeah. So it kind of blows my mind, the connection, the life connection, this sort of line connection. When you mentioned Ingo Swann, Hal Puthoff, Russ Targ, that was the line that took me into the Jimmy Carter, into Stanford Research Institute. We would have had it done except for the intervention of Peter Schwartz, who set me up with a deep state and the targeting. And then Peter Schwartz appears again as the author of the master plan for the pandemic. And then we had to create the tribunal to come in and really adjudicate against the tribunal as a genocidal false flag. So that takes us there from the 1970s, 30 years through the 20 years, that takes us through 50 years of work.
Mm-hmm.
So are there guys still going forward today? Are the good guys time traveling and getting the advanced information, or is it still, we're told also that the reptilians are being removed, the bases are getting taken out, the children are coming up from below. We're past 0 point then. We're moving into that positive space you're saying.
Exactly.
Nice. And I think if we all keep our thoughts clear, our intentions clear, our hearts clear, that's how we help individually. Hold it up.
That's a thought.
Yeah, because we're in a time-space hologram, and we're on a positive timeline. And the dark force is always trying to throw stuff in our face to make us think that we're not on a positive timeline.
So if the dark forces can see way in the future, do they see their demise as imminent? And are they're obviously holding on, but
Well,
looking out even further.
Those are key questions. And that's why one hypothesis that I think is that that's why they timed the pandemic precisely around the December 21st, 2020 Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, to try and dampen as much as possible the awakening of humanity so that they could hold on to power. That's why they did it. And so it's a continuing struggle now. So we who are awakened, now can pursue the implementation of the new Earth and really displacing them on the planet, and working with cosmic, natural, universal law, international law, social law, to really rid them of their ability to harm the community of human souls anymore.
Are there any ET groups on the other side out there that are positive and working towards us? Some of the folks over in Europe are in contact with the Pleiadians, and there's a lot of layers, yeah.
I think that it's pretty obvious that no matter where you look, there's good folks and bad folks in every faction. I don't think that time and space has changed that much.
Maybe, Alfred, if you could repeat the websites. Peace and Space is one, and then the humanity.
Yeah. The you can find our tribunal at peaceandspace.org. Now, just Google. I know it's a mouthful. It's just I've been doing everything basically on my blog, because and it's a living platform for a New Earth community. Just do an internet search on that, and it'll take you. And we have now in 2021, we're going to have virtual meetings the last Sunday of every month, starting on January 31st.
Okay.
And we'll put out a Zoom link that people can join, and there's only 100 spaces there. But what we'll do is we'll put the live signal out on Exopolitics TV, youtube.com/Exopolitics TV. So that people can just go and watch it there, the meeting, and they can comment there.
Perfect.
And it's really to start to build a community that's beyond this reality now that is this nation state, war, disease, crime, and poverty reality. Because look what the current order has given us: pandemic 2020, 2021. That's what they ordered up.
Yeah.
That's about as bad as they can. They're just miserable. They're horrible. They're horrible beings at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, they are. And so they're unredeemable, And so we really have to build a new Earth outside of that, and we can do that virtually, and at the same time clean them up through our tribunals. The leadership there that we have, the main perpetrators, we've been able to give them incarceration sentences of varying lengths without parole, and we're going after them.
Say, who are some of the leaders then, you know, on the new platform? Is Laura Eisenhower and Sasha Stone and all those big names also in on it?
Look, this is
It's global.
it's up to us.
Up to us.
You know, whoever, it's up to, we're a
Keep doing
huge
it.
community. We're billions of human souls,
Yeah.
and we're all just going to flower.
Yep.
You know, and it's all we're all going to co-create.
So let's get it on. Let's get behind Alfred and
Yeah.
the new platform. Let's do this.
Excellent. Well, Alfred, thank you very much for coming today. I know that you had another appointment booked, and I don't want to keep you up for the entire afternoon, but I do want everybody to go check out Alfred's stuff at Exopolitics, and please follow along, support what he's doing. There are good folks out there trying to accomplish stuff, and it's very important for us now more than ever to, you know, throw our hat in the ring and pick a side. You know, you can't just be apathetic your whole life, folks. But and then if anybody wants to follow along my stuff, Deciphering My Experience on YouTube and MeWe, I'm also trying to help folks like Alfred move forwards in what they're doing and make connections for other folks that may have been negatively impacted by some factions in the past. It's good to have peers, folks, reach out, step out of the shadows, and communicate with other people and let them know what your story is. I've often said that, you know, 80% of our lives we share commonly with each other, but 20% of our lives we kind of hold secret to ourselves as paranormal experiences, things that don't really make sense. And I'm trying to help people share their 20%, I guess, and get it out there.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Well, guys, thank you everybody for coming. Jimmy from 0 Point Truth Radio, thank you for coming by today. And I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon and evening. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Namaste.